The cops showed up at my ranch over a backyard pool, like I'd built a casino on sacred ground. In less than an hour, a homeowners association president turned my driveway into a stage, my name into a headline, and my family into the neighborhood's favorite target. And the wild part is, she did it all while standing on land she didn't even control. I live out in Pine Hollow Valley, Montana, where the sky feels bigger than the problems. Or at least it used to. My place is Mercer Ranch, tucked just far enough from the subdivision that I can hear their lawnmowers, but I don't have to attend their community meetings. I'm Jack Mercer, and I work in law enforcement for the county. I'm used to disputes, fence lines, barking dogs, your tree dropped leaves on my truck kind of stuff, but I had never not once dealt with someone who treated rules like a weapon and called it protecting the community. It started simple. I wanted a pool, not a resort pool, not some flashy infinity thing, just a normal one so my kids could stop begging me to drive an hour to the public splash pad. I pulled permits, hired a legit crew, had everything in writing. The morning the excavation began, it actually felt peaceful. A machine humming, dust floating in the sunlight, that dry pine smell in the air. I remember thinking, yeah, this is going to be a good summer. Then I heard tires bite gravel hard. An Audi came sliding up like it had something to prove, white paint shining like it had never seen a dirt road on purpose. The driver's door snapped open and out stepped Linda Whitmore. You know the type. Perfect bob haircut, blazer that doesn't belong outdoors, phone already up like she's about to record a crime documentary. She didn't wave, didn't introduce herself, didn't even look at the permit placard we had posted. She marched straight toward the hole in my yard and said, "Stop, right now. This violates HOA guidelines." I blinked just once because it was that absurd. "Ma'am, there is no HOA out here." Linda tilted her head like I'd said something in a foreign language. "Pine Hollow Estates Homeowners Association oversees the valley. You're going to tank property values with this." I kept my voice even. "Pine Hollow Estates is over there. This is my ranch. Different boundary, different jurisdiction, different everything." She smiled like she'd won an argument that hadn't even started. "You don't get to decide that. I do." And while she's saying this, she's walking closer to the excavator. Not to talk, not to ask questions. To get footage. She angled herself behind the machine right in the worst possible spot, like she wanted a dramatic shot of illegal construction in progress. I told her, "Hey, back up. That's dangerous." She didn't move. The operator rotated the bucket, a normal motion, nothing crazy, and a ribbon of wet dirt flicked off the metal. It splattered right across Linda's pastel pantsuit like nature itself had just issued a correction. For half a second she stood there frozen, staring down at herself. Then she snapped her eyes up at me and screamed, "You did that on purpose." I laughed once because my brain couldn't find a more logical reaction. "I didn't throw dirt at you. You walked behind heavy equipment." Her phone was still recording. "Assault," she said loud enough for the crew to hear. "Vandalism, harassment. I'm calling the police." I figured she was bluffing. People like Linda love threatening consequences more than actually dealing with them. But about 2 hours later, a deputy rolled up anyway, Ethan Brooks, a guy I'd worked cases with. Ethan stepped out, looked at the excavator, looked at me, then looked at Linda, who was standing by her car like she was hosting a press conference. She launched into it immediately. "He's building an unapproved pool. It's against HOA standards. He threw dirt at me. I feel unsafe." Ethan held up a hand. "Permit." I handed him the folder. Clean stamped, dated. He flipped through it calm as ever, then glanced back at Linda. "This is approved." Linda's nostrils flared. "Approved by who?" "County," he said, "which is the authority out here." Linda's smile twitched like it wanted to stay alive but couldn't find oxygen. "Then I want to speak to the sheriff." I almost said something smart. I didn't. I just watched her stomp back to her Audi, mud still streaked across her outfit like a signature. After that, it stopped being about the pool. It became about control. Over the next week, I got letters. Not friendly ones. Official-looking envelopes with bold text that said things like, "Notice of violation" and "Final warning," like I'd built a junkyard, not a pool. They taped a laminated citation to my gate, which is hilarious when you remember I don't belong to their HOA and a gate isn't a community bulletin board. Someone posted in the neighborhood group that I was destroying the valley's character. Another person suggested I was probably hiding something because I didn't want to comply. My wife started getting side eyes in town. My kids asked why people were mad at us. And every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened like I was bracing for a hit. That's the part nobody tells you, how fast a small lie turns into a community hobby. One night after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with that permit folder and a stack of paperwork. I wasn't spiraling into poetry about my soul. I was doing math, time, money, risk. I kept thinking, what if I missed something dumb? A signature on the wrong line. A fee paid under the wrong code. Not because Linda was right, because she was loud, and loud people don't need to be right to cause damage. And I'll admit it. I stared at that half-dug hole on the security camera feed and thought maybe I should just fill it back in, eat the cost, move on, not surrender, just stop the bleeding. Then the next day I got a knock at the door. It was Helen Price, my older neighbor who'd lived out here before Pine Hollow Estates was even a name on a brochure. She didn't waste time. She held out a small notebook and said, "She's doing this to you because she thinks you'll fold." I didn't even ask who she was. I just let out a breath. Helen nodded toward the valley. That HOA. They don't oversee the valley. They oversee their little slice. Linda's been telling people otherwise for years. She gave me a number. Call Tom Garner. He used to work land records. He'll show you what she doesn't want you to see. Tom met me the same afternoon with a rolled-up map and the kind of tired expression you only get from people who've watched too many folks argue over lines on paper. He spread the plat map across the hood of my truck and traced the boundary with his finger. "Here's Pine Hollow Estates," he said. "Here's where their HOA authority ends." His fingertips stopped, nowhere near my ranch. "Your property is outside," Tom said, plain and certain, "not even close." Then he hit me with the part that made my jaw tighten. "And some of their lots. They're on land that's under a long-term lease tied to your ranch. They own the houses. They don't own every inch they think they do." My pulse didn't spike like a movie scene. It just settled, like a lock clicking into place. Because now I wasn't arguing feelings. I had boundaries, documents, facts. I started collecting everything. Screenshots of posts, copies of the letters, photos of the citation taped to my gate, video from my driveway camera showing Linda stepping onto my land and ordering my crew around like she owned them. I called Ethan, not asking for favors, just making sure it was documented. "If they come back, I want it clean," I told him. "No drama, just record what happens." Linda, of course, went for maximum drama anyway. A few days later, she showed up with 2 board members and a handful of residents, all gathered near my entrance like it was a public hearing. She had a tripod, a wireless mic. Her phone was strapped to a gimbal like she was filming a documentary titled "The Fall of Jack Mercer." She pointed at the excavation and announced, "We are here to stop illegal construction." I pulled up slow parked and stepped out. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for an ending. Linda saw me and immediately raised her voice for the camera. "You can't intimidate us. We have authority." I walked to my truck and set the plat map on the tailgate. Then I laid down the county permit folder beside it. No yelling, no performance. "Linda," I said, "before you say another word, tell me what section of your HOA gives you jurisdiction here." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She tried again. "The community standards, Section 1, repeated calm. One of the board members, Mark Reynolds, shifted uncomfortably. He looked less like a bully and more like a guy who realized he'd been dragged into something messy. I tapped the map. "Here is Pine Hollow Estates. Here is the boundary. Here is my ranch." Linda snapped. "This is a conflict of interest. We need the sheriff." I nodded. "You're looking at him." The group went quiet in a way that felt physical, like someone turned off a generator. Linda's face tightened, but she didn't back down. She couldn't. People like her don't retreat. They double down. "You can't investigate yourself," she said. "I'm not investigating me," I replied. "I'm clarifying you." I turned the map slightly toward Mark. "Your HOA doesn't have authority out here. These letters you sent, these violations. That's harassment." Mark stared at the boundary line, then at Linda. "You told us it covered the whole valley." Linda's voice got sharp. "Because it should. People like him make us look bad." I didn't even have to speak next. Someone from the crowd did. A younger guy, nervous hands in his pockets. "My deed says the lot sits on leased ground," he muttered. "I thought that was normal." Linda whipped her head toward him like she wanted to erase him with a glare. "Stop talking!" Mark exhaled, long and heavy. "Linda, you've been overstepping." She looked around, realizing the camera wasn't helping anymore. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll call state police. I'll—" "Do it," Mark said, cutting her off. And while you're at it, we're calling an emergency meeting. This," he motioned at the papers. The gate noticed the crowd. "This is abuse of power." Linda's eyes darted, searching for someone to back her up. Nobody moved. Mark looked at the other board member. Vote. Right there in front of everyone, Linda Whitmore got stripped of her position as president of the HOA. Not with a dramatic soundtrack, just a blunt consequence spoken out loud. She stood still for a second, like she couldn't process a world where she wasn't in charge. Then she grabbed her tripod, yanked her mic off, and marched back to that white Audi with dirt-stained pants and a face full of rage. The door slammed so hard it echoed down my driveway, and then the valley got quiet again. Power isn't loud until the moment it loses.